If we didn't get a chance to say happy Thanksgiving, we're hoping that your Thanksgiving was awesome. It's Friday, it's Chat with Mac. It's been kind of a grueling week, but we know a lot of people are out enjoying themselves. Nadeem, how was your Thanksgiving?
Oh, it was pretty good. Stayed home, just try to catch up on some sleep. But
Yeah,
actually, we're gonna. My wife said she's gonna cook the turkey today, and then we have some people coming tonight. So really, the Thanksgiving is gonna be today for us.
awesome, awesome, awesome.
um, but yeah, I mean, other than that, it was nice to have an extra day off, and I did send out the holiday message yesterday. I was thinking about what I'm going to talk about, and I was like, wait a minute, we're just going to talk about Thanksgiving. Forget tech, forget work, just talk about Thanksgiving.
That Thanksgiving message was awesome. I actually meant to send you a message. I was like, "Hey, that's a great message. It was awesome." Yeah.
But so if folks don't know, you're kind of like a chef extraordinaire, aren't you?
Yeah, you could. It's something like that. Yeah. No, I worked. I left corporate America for 7 years when I was back home in Chicago, and I worked in fine dining for 7 years. Food outside of tech, food is my passion. I love food. Love, love, love food. So, yesterday was a great deal of cooking. I'm still tired from it, but yeah, I was cooking all day yesterday.
Yeah, no, it's all good. Yeah, I think what I'm going to do is, so I'm not at home. I'm working over at my parents' place, but yeah, I think by the time I get home, the wife's going to have the turkey and everything ready, and I'm just people are going to come. I'm just going to eat, and then I'm thinking, I'm going to sit outside, maybe start a little fire, and just chill outside for a little bit.
Nice,
Yeah.
nice. Yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So what are we going to talk about as far as tech goes, Mac?
Well, ladies, so Nadeem and Nadeem definitely has been really preaching the gospel as far as MSP, having someone manage your services. And going into the new year, we really want to talk about that. Here's what we're seeing as far as trends are concerned. COVID has opened the eyes of quite a few people, businesses now, the need to have somebody run their services, but more importantly, how it helps with their bottom line. And so we really want to, take a little time and have Nadeem, of course, talk about why you need to pick an MSP, not just any MSP, a good MSP that focuses on pre being more proactive as far as your measures are concerned. So I'll let Nadeem talk about that because that's so important.
Yeah, so there are several classes of MSPs, right? There are people who are just doing regular break fix IT services, and they can call themselves MSPs. It doesn't make them an MSP, but they call themselves MSP. But before we get into all that, what is an MSP? Managed Services Provider. What that means is you don't need an IT department in house. The IT company, the third party, is your IT department. They do everything that an IT department will do. They do all the functions of your network administrators, of your CIOs, CTOs, centralized services, everything they provide as a service to you. And then all this is provided to the customer at a usually at a per seat price. So it's not based on how many calls the MSP gets or how much time they spend on something. It's all based on how many computers or nodes you have, and the MSP charges you on a per node basis. So for example, we have pretty straightforward pricing. So the first 20 nodes up to 20 nodes is $2,899 per month, right? So that lowers the ceiling for entry for smaller businesses. And we have a lot of customers who don't have 20 users; they have less than 20, but they are using that 20 user package because that way they can take advantage of the MSP services. And then after that, we charge $189 per month per machine. So you can grow as much as you want. Now, there are a lot of things that happen on the back end, and every time we engage with a new customer, and the customer, of course, the customer's like, well, what can you do to shave off this cost? And my answer to them is, what part of the service do you want me to take off? I mean, we can't just take, I mean, it's not like we throw a coin up in the air and figure out, okay, well, this is what our price is going to be. The pricing is actually it's all a numbers game, right? It's all calculated. All of our costs are calculated and baked in. Now, over time, what happens is usually customers will see that their support calls will drop.
Yep.
This is when I start having the second conversation around pricing. So I'll get a call from the CEO or the president of the company, and they'll be like, "Hey, Nadeem, back a few years ago when we started with you, our support calls were through the roof. We were getting, 50, 60 calls a day. My guys were calling you, but now I'm only giving you guys like 5 or 6 calls a day. So since those number of calls are so low, I think that you should reduce your price." So that's the second question I get, after we've been servicing a customer. Now, here's the thing. The reason we're not getting that many calls like we did when we first started is because of the things we're doing on the back end that are streamlining the whole process, the whole service delivery area. For example, our TAM role, the Technology Alignment Manager's role, is to make sure that everything is standardized. For example, in the past, maybe you guys had an in-house person who was running wires, and they just crimp the wires, plug them in, hope they work. When we come in, we get actual cabling guys who will run the cable, certify each drop to a Gbps or 100 Mbps, whatever data rate that we need for that customer. They will certify it, label it, everything is labeled. The server room looks like a clean server room. It doesn't look like, a maze of wires everywhere and spider webs and all that. So some of the things that we standardize, the goal for standardizing is that we reduce the number of support calls. So in other words, if the wiring is good, then the chances are very low that we're going to get a support call related to something going on with wiring. So for example, certain times of the day, my computer gets real slow. Or when I'm copying some stuff or doing a Zoom video, a lot of times my computer just stutters or my machine just stutters, for whatever reason. I don't know why it just does that. Those kind of things could be related down to wiring. Then we go a step further. Now you're starting looking into the logic of everything, which normally if you have in-house IT guys, they're not even going to start to think about that because they're always busy putting out fires. And that's where the real advantage of the MSP comes in, is the MSP is not just putting out fires on a day-to-day basis like your own in-house IT guys might be doing. The MSP is actually thinking critically for the long term, how can I reduce the support cost? And we've already done that. I mean, we've been doing this for 20 years. So we've already encountered a lot of the situations that are happening at a lot of different customers. As we onboard a customer, we see the same stuff happens. It doesn't matter what industry the customer is in. It doesn't matter what size the company it is. The same issues we see across the board. So we've become pretty good at seeing these issues and then standardizing it, implementing standards, minimizing what we call noise. Some of you might have heard me say this word. So the noise is really the number of support calls coming in, reactive support calls. The lower your noise level, the better, more streamlined you're running. And in the MSP world, you want to lower the noise as much as possible. Now, of course, you cannot make it zero because If you made it 0, then probably nobody's working, right? Because if people are working, there's going to be issues. If a human is behind a computer, there's going to be issues. So our goal with everything is to standardize the service delivery, to minimize the noise, and then that kind of brings us over time to have less support calls. Now, on the other side of things, we do a lot of we have a lot of proactive systems that are, once we onboard customers, we put those into place. For example, we will do automatic notification, automatic alerting, automatic, and I mean, not only alerting, but our system will see an alert. So I'll give you an example. Let's say your hard drive on one of your servers is running low on disk space. Soon as our system sees that alert, the system is going to trigger a few things. It's gonna try to do a few things to rectify that alert. So it's gonna automatically run your disk cleanup utility. It's going to remove memory DMP files. It's going to remove temp files. So it's going to do this maintenance on the machine, trying to get more free space available on that volume. So it's going to do that. Now, a lot of times, and we see these in these logs, so we collect a lot of data. So a lot of times we'll see in these logs that a system has cleared, run its maintenance, cleared up all these things. And then after like 4 or 5 days, that same volume runs low on disk space again. Well, now, instead of just proactively cleaning and doing that, we're going to get a human involved. And the human is going to get involved to see, hey, maybe we just need to give that volume more capacity. And so we don't want to do that via automatic methods, because we want to have very close tabs on which system is requiring how much additional capacity, why. And then the other important part is we need to log this information when we increase the capacity, because capacity is limited. So we don't have an unlimited pool of space that we can just give, something. So if we are giving a server more capacity, then we want to make sure that we have enough capacity on hand in case there's an emergency. So maybe we increase the server volume by, let's say 200 gigs, but then on the other side, we send an estimate to the customer to add, 5 more drives to the system. So, and now when we do this, the users are not impacted at this point. This was all automatic, proactive. So the users don't even know that had somebody not checked the free disk space on that server, the server could have crashed. And let me tell you, Windows does not like running out of disk space. When Windows runs out of disk space, bad things happen. You don't want to do that. So the MSP process is basically streamlining the entire delivery of the entire stack. Like I said, there's the TAM service, there is a VCIO service, there is the project service, there is the centralized services. There is finally the last cog of the wheel is support. That's the noise, which we want to minimize. Now, I know a lot of you are thinking this. That's all well and good, but what are your response times? What is your SLA and all of that? You might have heard about those terms. So SLA means service level agreement. So here's the thing: do you care? At the end of the day, if your support calls went from 55 a day to 10 a day, do you care what the SLA is? Do you care what the response time is? Because you've already more than twice, you've already reduced your noise. So now, having said that, that doesn't mean that our response times are very bad. No, they're actually very good compared to the industry standard. So, for example, I'll give you an idea. So, industry standard is 4-hour response time, right? So, big companies, small companies, if you engage with an IT company, 4-hour response time is the best that's going to happen. Our response time guaranteed is 2 hours for contract customers. 2 hours. Right now, our response time is 17 minutes, and we post that response time up on our website. 17 minutes. We strive to minimize the response time. We want to get it as small as we can. Yep. I'm kind of OCD that way because if some techs, they are not working on a project and a ticket comes in, and if they didn't pick it up, like within 10-20 minutes, I'm like, hey, how come you're not, so I don't want to hear that, oh, I was just, like, just browsing the internet, or, if, you should be taking care of that ticket. So the thing is that you want to minimize that noise. You want to streamline the services so that you don't have that much noise. So at the end of the day, when you're going from about 50 tickets a day to like maybe 5 or 10 tickets a day, then that is that much less noise that gives you that much capacity to focus on things that will improve the bottom line of the business. So maybe now you will start thinking of, okay, well, we are growing to, we're going to add 10 new users come next year. Well, the VCIO will get that information from upper management, and then the VCIO will set a plan. How are we going to support those 10 users? What do we need to do? Do we have enough switch capacity? Do we have enough capacity on the servers to handle the load of these 10 additional users? Do we need to add more hardware? Do we need, what all do we need in the entire staff to be able to support these 10 additional users and support them well? That's the whole thing about MSP, and that's what differentiates an MSP from just any other IT provider. The time and day of reactive support are numbered. They're already, for most businesses, they're gone.
Yep.
Just like we went from on-prem systems to cloud systems, we went from that one-time huge lump sum cost every couple of years to an ongoing monthly low cost. To services, the same thing is happening to services. So it's a known low monthly cost based on the number of users, as opposed to just those spurts of cost that you don't know about, and they just happen at the most inopportune time. And that's right. The idea is to standardize everything, to make sure that everything is done when you want it done, not when things go wrong and you have to do them. And that's the whole thing that minimizes costs.
So, but now you kind of talk about something that I know is going to be on the mind of any business owner that's listening to this. You talked about the cost, but talk to them about the benefits to their bottom line as far as having someone having the VCIO role being filled, as opposed to having somebody in office.
Let me give you a real world example. So we onboarded a customer, and so they had, historically they had a CIO in house. It's about, I think, 30 or 40 user company. So they had a CIO in-house, and he was doing, a lot of the IT stuff, and they would only escalate issues to us when they couldn't handle it in-house. So they had an IT admin in-house, they had a CIO in-house, and everything was fine. Well, so for whatever reason, they had to let the CIO go. And at that time, we kind of started negotiating about, they came to me and said, well, they're looking for another, CIO position, somebody to hire in that position. And I was like, wait a minute, why are you looking to hire somebody in a CIO position? I mean, you have all the overhead of this additional employee. Why would you even need that? Let us handle all of that. And of course, they had never used, or they didn't even know about something like this. So they were kind of hesitant, but they did a trial. They started out. They did, okay, we'll try it. We'll see how it goes. And here's what happened. So instead of paying, $110,000 a year to the CIO position, their cost on an annual basis is like, $48,000, and that includes multiple roles. So not only did they get the CIO role as part of the MSP service plan, they got a TAM, a technology alignment manager, as well. Now, here's the things that so the technology alignment manager spends a few hours on site going through all the systems at the customer site. The first assessment that we did, we found out so many different things. But before we even get to that, when we onboarded, so we do like an assessment, kind of like the security assessment that you talk about with customers. So we do like an assessment. So we did the assessment and we sent this report to the VP and the owner of the company, and they were taken aback because a lot of things that they thought were being done were not done. They had to meet certain compliance requirements, and a lot of options they had to have in place, a lot of things they had to have in place, they did not have in place, but yet the CIO checked the box, we have this in place. So what does that mean? That means if something happens, if there was a breach, they were going to be held liable for that. They did not follow industry standards. Their upstream provider had this document where they said they're doing these few things per their compliance requirements, but they were not. So all of a sudden that was a huge issue now because the owner had signed off with the provider that they were doing these things and they had implemented these things when they had not been implemented. Why did this happen? So here's why this happens, and we see this all the time. The in-house TAM and the CIO roles, they are always overworked. They're always putting out fires. They don't have time to scratch their heads. They don't have time to implement certain policy requirements that it's so easy for them to just check that box, and because they're not doing it with bad intentions. They're thinking, for example, complex password. We don't have it right now, but I'm going to implement this. I'm going to check this. Yes, I'm going to implement this. And then once they check it, they send it, they submit it. They don't remember anymore that's one thing, because now they're putting out other fires. They're not thinking about that box they checked on that piece of paper, right? Now, that is what causes severe issues in the industry, not having an MSP to handle those kind of tasks. Now, there is a built-in incentive for us to find those things and then fix those things, because remember that project part of the puzzle, the one of the delivery areas. So if we find things that are not being done that should be done, then we go to management and say, hey, we need to implement these systems because these are requirements per our agreement with this third party, and that's part of their compliance requirement. Now that is a project service. So there's a built-in incentive for us to go ahead and do that project, as opposed to just to check that box and move on, right?
Right.
So those are the things. Now, one of the other things is, a lot of times we see this all the time. Customers will have outdated hardware that is still running. It's almost like, if it's not giving you a problem, let's not worry about it. Let's just solve the problems that we're having, because they're always putting out fires. So one of the things that we see are network switches. There are customers out there that have network switches that are like 5 or 10 years old. They have never looked at them. People scream, "Oh, my computer is slow, or our network is slow." Too many users on the network. Don't worry about it. It'll get better, and that's it, right? It's not going to get better by itself. Those switches, eventually, one of those switches is going to die. And then what? Now you're dead in the water. Now think about it. You have 10 users or 20 users in a certain part of the office, and the switch dies. Now you have these users just sitting there twiddling their thumbs while you wait to get a new switch shipped in. Wouldn't it have saved so much time and effort if you had proactively replaced that switch on a weekend and scheduled it, as opposed to putting that fire out? And that's the thing, is we don't want to drag this car uphill. We want to point it downhill and let it go by itself. And that's where we try to get to. We want to minimize that noise, and we want to standardize based on industry standards. Folks, industry standards are there for a reason, and those should be the bare minimums. An example is, this lady called me from a medical office, and they were like, well, should we put something like this in place because HIPAA requires it? And my answer to her was like, shouldn't you go above and beyond what the government requires of you? I mean, shouldn't you do better than the bare minimum? all the customers that we have as as their MSPs, we make sure that we follow a good base standard for all industries, and that good base standard is gonna, when we standardize things, they're automatically ahead of that compliance battle. They don't have to kind of keep running trying to stay ahead of it. They're already ahead of that compliance. And we don't just say it, we actually prove it. We run the assessments, and that's part of the MSP packages. We're going to run the assessment on a routine basis. So we don't want to run into a situation where passwords, there's a complex password requirement or password expiration set for a certain department, and then one day an admin comes in and there's an issues and they disable the password expiration temporarily, but then they forget to enable it. We don't want to run into that situation. Yeah. And that's why we run these assessments on a routine basis. And a lot of times they give us the same result, but we're looking for that one time when it doesn't. So we can catch that and we can fix that proactively as opposed to being reactive to when it proverbially hits the fan. So that's the whole thing about the MSPs is it's a total change in the way you think. It's like routine oil changes in your car. I'd rather change my engine oil on a routine basis as opposed to never change it, never look at it when it runs dry and the engine stalls on the side of the freeway, and then call the wrecker and say, yeah, I got a problem. That's what you want to avoid. And it's the same thing. It's the same concept. You want to proactively do things ahead of time. And the best thing that that I see is that when you do things on your schedule, you're scheduling ahead of time, there's a lot less cost associated with that, as opposed to when you have to drop something and then put out a fire because you didn't pay attention to that part. That has a lot more cost associated with that. Not only cost in terms of money, but cost in terms of peace of mind. Cost in terms of it makes you nervous. It's like, I got to do that. It makes you anxious. It makes people anxious. And there's a certain cost to all of that, whether it's health, whether it's mental health, whether it's money, whatever it is, that cost is what you want to minimize. And that's what the MSP's goal is, to minimize that cost by standardizing things. And we're not like an in-house CIO where we're just going to check that box. We're going to actually implement systems so we can, in good conscience, check that box and say we are done. So that's the thing I get excited about.
I love it. No, I think it's seriously. It's needed because again, it's hard for people to merge the art with the science, and some people will. And I get looking at your bottom line and like, well, this is just good enough until it's not good enough, and then it's like, man, maybe if we were to take time at the beginning.
But not just that, the other thing is, people think that they're saving a buck by not being proactive, but actually, if you look at the overall picture, companies that we have engaged as an MSP with have fared through this pandemic really well. They are actually on a growth path. So they're not like companies who are just putting out fires now. They're actually looking to hire more people because they're growing. So these companies are on a growth path. So that tells me a lot. That tells me that we are doing something right, where they don't have to worry about if their systems are going to keep up with that growth. They already know it's going to keep up with that growth. It's like internally, we automate certain things. We pay other third parties, a lot of money for certain things, for tools, for whatever you have. And the reason we do that is because those companies do that part best. That's not our niche. So I'd rather pay somebody to do what's their niche that they do best, and then I do what I do best. And that's the thing is, MSPs, they do best IT, the all the these 5 roles. They just really make a huge impact on the bottom line of the business in the long run. If you're short-sighted, you're going to be like, oh, I can save a couple of $100 here. But if you look at the whole year or 2 years, you spent more than the $100 you saved because you were always putting out fires and you were never putting good systems in place that can last for 5 years as opposed to just 1 year. An example is, I see customers all the time implementing consumer grade hardware. I mean, they're like Netgear switches, on their network. Instead of running new drops, they just put a 5-port switch somewhere and split that one drop into multiples. And then once they start doing that, one user does it, another user does it. Pretty soon, there's 7, 8 users in the office who've done this, and then they start screaming, "Oh, our network is not running fast enough. It's very slow. Things are not running." Because the customers, they don't understand the network is going to go as fast as your slowest switch on the network. So if you have this, in the server room, if you have these 10G switches, and then at one desk you put in a 100 Mbps switch to split that one cable drop connection into multiples, you just kill that 10G switch that you had in the server. It's going to run in 100 Mbps. It's like, why waste? You just wasted all that money. You may have spent a few $1,000s on those 10G switches. You just threw it out the door just to save a couple of $100 to run a drop from the main, from the server room. So those are the things that when we standardize things that we implement, we're not going to suggest that you install a consumer grade switch at a desk to split a connection. We're going to say, no, we need a new drop. We need a drop in so-and-so area, or we need 10 drops because we're fixing to hire 10 new users who are going to go into that part of the building. So we get those drops, and we don't do cabling ourselves. We have another party that does the cabling. We have a whole department that does cabling. So we don't want to just run the cable and call it a day. We want to run the cable. We want every drop that's run to be tested, certified for the speed that we need. So if it's a GBPS connection, we want to see that certification for GBPS throughput on that line. And the tester, when it pushes that 1G, a lot of your home crimped connections, it will fail because you don't realize how bad your connections are until you put that fluke tester on there and find out, it's, it will tell you in frequency and what kind of frequency it can pass through that line and where there's some noise in the line, where's some bleed through coming in. I mean, you don't see those kind of things if you're just having your electricians just run a cable, crimp it, and you call it a day.
Yeah, call it a day, yeah. Yeah.
So I mean, this is the same thing, that I would implement internally if I had a business and I was making widgets and I didn't, if my focus is on making widgets, then I'd rather have somebody else come in and handle my IT to support me in making my widgets, because that's what I do best. So have somebody do IT, and that's what they do best, right?
Yes.
And it's like if I want to have somebody work on my transmission, or even better example, let's say I want to see a heart specialist. Maybe I think there's something wrong, and then if I go, I'm going to find the best doctor that I can find to look at that. Or if I need a lawyer, I'm going to find the best lawyer in the field that I'm looking for. I'm not going to go for the cheapest. You know what happens when you go with the cheapest? I mean, that's the thing. You want the best. You don't want the cheapest.
Yep.
But yeah, it's interesting how we see so many different people in so many different industries, and then once it clicks with them, and they say, well, that makes sense. Hey, Nadeem, let's try this, and then they try it, and they start seeing that noise level go down. And they're like, oh, sigh of relief. It's like they didn't think that they could ever get that curve, get ahead of that.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden that noise goes down and they're like, oh, we can focus on business.
Other things. Yeah. And that's the goal. That's the goal, is to get a lot, individuals, the owners, away from having to worry about, that part of it, which can be a little bit taxing, so you can focus on growth.
Yeah.
And so when you're splitting yourself, especially with, let's just be honest, cheap MSP, your brother, your uncle, whatever.
Yeah. Well, I mean, here's another example, and I just thought of this. This call came in. I think it was really late Wednesday. So this is like like around 5:30 on Wednesday. A call comes in. Hey guys, we need to create some custom recordings for Thanksgiving. This is after 5 p.m. on Wednesday, and this call comes in, and I'm like, really? So now here's what happened. I don't have a problem with that. That we are here to support customers, so we can do that. Now it's after 5. Okay, that's after hours billable time, right? Mm-hmm. Now, if we were engaged as an MSP with this customer, the CIO role would have recorded that greeting ahead of time and done all that, so you don't have to worry about it. We would have put in a time frame, pre-programmed our time frame, so automatically for Thursday the greeting would switch. It would automatically have that custom greeting on there. Nobody has to touch anything. Nobody has to scramble. Now they have like 5 people waiting in the office because they have multiple languages they have to record. And I don't speak those languages. Our guys don't speak those languages. So it's like, okay, you have somebody who can record a message in whatever language, and they're like, oh yeah, we have the people, we told them they have to stay late because we have to record the greetings. And I'm like, great. So now look at the cost of that. Those people who had to stay there after work, that and these guys usually, they leave at 4 o'clock. So now they're there till like 6 or 7. They have to record the greetings. We are going to bill you to test the greetings. Now, a lot of times I see this. A lot of times people after hours will not test it. They'll like, okay, yeah, it's all good. I recorded it. It's good. And then it's not like until the greeting was supposed to take place and it didn't, and then the CEO who happened to call in, says, scrambling, is like, oh, put out a fire, our greeting's not going, and people are calling in, and it's just ringing and ringing or whatever. It's like those things can be done proactively at a much lower cost compared to when you do it reactively. It costs you a lot more. And not only a hard cost, but also customer satisfaction. And if you're in the health industry, what if a patient had an issue and they're calling in and now they can't make any headway? I mean, that's a big problem. Yeah. So those kind of things, it's best done proactively, and that's what we like to do. I'd rather do everything ahead of time, set it on a schedule, and be done with it. So the system will automatically know what time it is. And now the system is going to keep much better track of time than you or I are going to do it. I mean, on pretty much every system that we deploy, we sync the time with the atomic clock. So we make sure that the clocks are good. And that's critical when it comes to computers and IT in general, because if you have drift in clock after a certain threshold, machines will have a problem logging in because they're detecting that something's wrong here. There's too much of a clock drift. So that's another topic. But yeah, so the bottom line is be proactive. If you have an MSP, great. If you don't, look at engaging an MSP, convert that putting out fires and things like that into a standardized, known, good, scheduled maintenance plan. Don't don't run around like a chicken with its head cut off. Schedule everything ahead of time, and that will minimize your costs.
There it is. There it is.
So, what are you going to do this weekend?
I'm gonna sleep. As usual. Max sleeps and watch football on Saturdays. That's pretty much it. Yeah, I sleep, decompress, and think, and then do all that. But this weekend is it's sleep and football. That's all I'm doing.
Yeah, I never got too much into sports. I remember when I was a kid, we used to play like hockey and cricket and stuff, but just never really got into all of that. But computers, yeah, I got into that.
Oh, dang. I'm surprised. Funny thing is, I'm surprised that Dean doesn't have like a Xbox or a PS, 5 just to have.
So,
Just
so I'll tell you a little story. So I don't, but when Chris first came on board, so Chris is like a semi-pro gamer.
get out. Are you
Yeah, not a lot of people
serious?
know this, but I don't know if he still does it, with the kids and everything, but he's like a semi-pro gamer. So when he first came on board, when we started talking and he, I built a machine just for gaming. And this was a 3 monitor with a super powerful GPU in it.
Oh,
And I could play these games. It was like you're in the game, it was like, the experience was out of this world. But then, it just never, my focus was on how I can squeeze that additional bit of power for that game, not that much playing the game, but how I can squeeze that power more from that GPU. I was
so
more worried about
overclocking and all that
yeah,
other good
it's like
stuff.
I was more worried about, why am I running at, 30 frames per second? I want to run 60 or I want to run 120. Why 30? Why can't my GPU handle that? Do I need, liquid cooling? And I did have some liquid cooling on there, but I sold that system. It was fun. It was
Really?
a fun project.
I was never so I started off with PC gaming because back in the day, we couldn't really do console. Now I've kind of switched to console, but the part of me, like there was a game called Ages of Empires.
Oh yeah.
It still has a special place in I love that game. So there are parts of me that sometimes just wants to go back to PC gaming just for those RTS real time strategy type games. I
Yeah.
might do that actually. Now that we're talking about it, I might have to do that.
No, it's yeah. So I was always like that. I remember like right after high school when I got into PCs the first time. The reason I got into PCs was because I bought a PC and my I guess it was my OCD, but I wanted to use all the power. I wanted to tweak it enough to where I can get every ounce of that power out of it. I want to make sure I remember, going through the bio settings, trying different settings, and then, doing a test on it. How much faster is it doing that, like, 2 milliseconds faster now? Oh, this is why it's doing 2 milliseconds faster, because my level 2 cache speed is now higher and it's a little higher. I'm pushing it a little because that memory is not really meant to go that fast. But so it was always like, getting that additional bit of power out of the system, and that was always fun. And then of course, the guy, the shop where I bought the PC from, and I would talk to the guy again, and because I would have questions. I was like, hey, have you ever changed these settings? Why not? I'm seeing that I can run this calculation faster if I have this setting set to this, and that guy finally offered me a job when I was out of high school, and that's how I got into computers, because I was
Nice.
talking to him and he was like, "Dude, you just need to work over here."
Nice.
and
Nice.
and I mean, it was a lot of fun. I mean, I was working on all kinds of stuff. I remember, even fixing dot matrix printers. So these companies would bring their printers in, and in the past, so this guy, all he was doing was he would blow air through them and swap out the cartridge and say, done, I serviced it for you, give me my money. So when I started working on that, I was like, the head kind of runs on this rod over here, and that rod over time you can see kind of etching marks because of the movement of the head on it. And I was like, if that had some grease on it, it would be so much better. So now you can find the grease for, that goes on there. I don't know what kind of grease they use. So all I had was petroleum jelly, and I was like, that should work. So I put some petroleum jelly on that rod, and then I moved the head back and forth, and I can tell how smoothly that head would move back and forth. And I was like, just that little bit of lubrication is probably going to give them, so much more life out of that entire printer. And then I told the owner what I did, and he was like, wow, we're really like thinking this through, and we're really doing what we're getting paid to do.
Yeah, that's
I remember,
funny.
Another story is, and this will be my last story. Another one was, so there was a flood, and this guy, he was he used to do printing. He used to create content. Back then, not everybody had laser printers, so he was one of the probably the only laser printer in town. So everybody took their work to him to get it printed out. And there was a flood, and the printer was on the floor, and it got flooded, and it was like the water was above the printer. The printer was done. So but fortunately, the printer was not plugged in at that time because, they always unplug the printer because it draws so much power when it powers up. It needs to heat up. So it was unplugged. And he didn't plug it back in. He just brought it to us, and he was like, "Man, this printer got got waterlogged and stuff, and I don't know. I can't afford a new printer. This is my livelihood. This is how I make money. What can we do?" So I was like, "Well, let's see what we can do." So I opened it all up. I took all the PCBs out. I let them dry, and I didn't have any tools to dry them. I just put them out in the sun to let them dry. So
Right.
after they dried up, I just looked them over. I cleaned them up. And I put it all together, and I plugged it in, and boom, it worked. It worked. So and that was my first lesson was, just water by itself does not really kill electronics. It's if you power them after the water has shorted everything out, if you power them up, that's what kills electronics.
That's what
so
kills
that was a good
the machine.
lesson
Yeah.
for me. I still remember this. But yeah, there's been a
Awesome.
lot of trials and tribulations, along this journey. But maybe one day I'll give you a few more stories. But I think we should call it a day. We've been at it for a while. I didn't even keep track of time.
This was good. I liked it. I liked it a lot.
So Mac, have a great weekend and Thanksgiving. If you're still, do you have any family coming over or no?
No, everything being everything. Everyone, we're just kind of like
Yeah.
hoping that Christmas, might clear up, but we played it safe.
Yeah, or if it's not going to clear up, at least we'll have maybe a vaccine or something that
Or
can,
something. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So we just have my stepsons are coming over. I think both of them, and probably a few grandkids and stuff. But so it's just gonna be us and like a couple of days ago, my wife was like, before Thanksgiving, my wife was like, "Oh, nobody's gonna come over. It'll just the turkey will be just for you and me." And I was like, "That's fine, more for us."
This is the first year that I had not had turkey. This year they did duck. So, it was an interesting thing. It was great. But first year where we didn't do turkey. So it was good. It was good.
Have you ever made this thing called turducken?
No, you want to know something crazy? I've never had it. That's not a thing in Chicago, but here I heard it's a thing, and I have not had it yet.
Oh yeah, you want to try that?
Holy crap! Now I have to try it.
You have to try that. Now, not any place. You got to go to a place that is known for it. Now, the first one that I had, a guy came from Louisiana, and there was this, and he brought it with him, and man, it was just out of this world. I mean, it probably clogged half of my arteries, but oh boy, was it good.
Now I have to try it. Once everything clears up, I got to find a place that does turducken. I have to try it now.
Yeah. Well, you won't regret it. It's the best thing. But don't make a habit out of it. You don't want to eat it every day.
No. Just at least once, I got to try it out.
Yeah. All right, Mac. Nice talking to you as always, and hopefully,
Yes,
as people out there who are going to watch this video will learn something from it. Maybe they have a little more insight on what MSPs are and what they do and how they improve the bottom line of businesses.
Yep.
And until next week, everybody, have a great day and be safe out there.
Safe. Have a good one.